Hi, this is Bill Osborne, City Manager in Douglasville, and welcome to another edition of On the Agenda. In the past, I've always made some comments to identify the subject we're about to discuss, and I've introduced my guest while you have seen that person on the television screen. We're going to do that a little bit different this morning because before you see my guest, I'm going to ask him to say a few words to you.
Oh, my aching I-20
Now, probably most of you recognize that voice because you probably are listening to this person in the mornings, in the afternoons dealing with traffic, or on Saturdays with a special program he has. What some of you may not know is this is a resident of Douglas County, frequently is seen around Douglasville, and once worked for WDGL here in Douglasville. And of course I'm talking about WSB Radio's Herb Emory, Captain Herb, who's known to thousands of people by the name Captain Herb. Herb's great to have you today as my guest on the agenda.
Thank you for inviting me, Bill. Pleasure to be here.
I know you have a very busy schedule, so we appreciate you kind of detouring by City TV today. This will be a little different for you, though, is that usually you're the interviewer. Today, you're the interviewee.
I said, what did you do? Get the police chief, Chris Womack, to look up things on me here? So you got a big file over there.
That's right. Well, you know, Herb, I know you love your job. You can tell that by just listening to you on the radio. And you're on the radio early in the morning. You're on there late in the afternoon. Saturday, you've got your NASCAR show. I don't know if you ever have 2 days in a row off or that you ever find time to sleep.
It is a long day. My first report's at 5 o'clock, and I stay on in the mornings till 9, and sometimes after 9 if it need be, and then I come back in the afternoon, and my first report in the afternoon is 3:30. My last report's at 6:05, and I've been doing a split shift for a long time. It's a little bit easier now because originally, when I started doing this job at WSB back in 1991, and even before for Star 94 and WQXI, I was driving twice a day to Peachtree DeKalb Airport. I'd leave Douglasville and drive to Peachtree DeKalb in the morning, and then I'd drive back to Douglasville and take a little nap and get up and go back in the afternoon, and that was pretty taxing on me. And after doing that for about 20 years, I told the bosses at WSB, I said, listen, this is a long day because your day doesn't end at that 9 o'clock report in the morning because there's people calling that, you know, they were late for their job and they want you to call their boss and tell their boss that that I-20 was jammed up because of a wreck, and there's people that are picking their mother-in-law up at the airport and they want to know what time they need to leave Alpharetta to get to the airport. So there's a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls and messages and sales department appointments that they want you to participate in, and so I told them that I needed a little break, you know. Sometimes I didn't get back home till 8 o'clock at night and 8:30 driving from Peachtree to DeKalb. So after 20 years of flying, they finally told me that in the afternoon they built me a studio and I could stay on the ground and report from the studio. And I've got 3 computers there, and the helicopter still goes up, and I talk to them and I tell them where to go and they tell me what they see. But I'm only flying in the mornings now, so that's a little bit of a break now.
That's good. Well, today on the agenda, we want to talk about Captain Herb, and I want to start by going back many years. I know you grew up in the North Carolina Blue Ridge Mountains, and I understand that you were in the 6th grade when you got bit by the radio bug. And tell us about those years and how the radio bug bit you real good.
Well, my dad was a bowler, and he bowled in the bowling league about twice a week, and it just so happened that the radio station was next door to the bowling alley, and so I started wandering over there and asked him if I could empty the trash and sweep the floor, and I did that for years. And by the time I was in the 9th grade, they had started letting me read a few news headlines at night. And then I drove to Atlanta and when I was a junior in high school and took the test. At that time, you had to drive all the way down to Peachtree. Anywhere in the southeast, you had to drive to Peachtree Street and take a test to get your 3rd class radio license so you could work at a small station. And so I came down here and did that, and so I finally got to play some records. I was going to be a disc jockey. I wasn't really a newsman that was in my sights at that time, and ended up coming back to Atlanta to go to school, and I was planning to go back to North Carolina and work, but things didn't fall that way. The chips fell in a different direction once I got established down here going to school.
Well, I know when you first came to Atlanta, you were at a station where Skinny Bobby Harper was on the air.
Yes.
And I don't know how many of our viewers know about Skinny Bobby Harper, but that was a character, wasn't it?
Skinny Bobby, you know, he was a man of many voices, okay, and Laverne, the cleanup lunch lady that came through, and oh, it was amazing, and I always, before I went to it was at WIIN, and I was doing that as an intern for the broadcasting, the Atlanta School of Broadcasting, and I always thought that there was two people in there, and so it was amazing to actually see that it was one person. And what was funny was my responsibility. It was only me and Skinny Bobby were the only ones in that radio station. I answered the phone, and that was my job, was to answer the phone, and also to listen to WSB, to listen to the traffic reports. Now, I didn't report the traffic, but I wrote the traffic down from the WSB Skycopter, and I took it to Bobby, and I also listened to the jokes that Big John Moore and the other, Bob Van Camp, I believe, told, and I wrote the jokes down and took those to Bobby, too. So.
Well, now, at one point, then, you did come to Douglasville and worked at the radio station here, WDGL. How did that happen, and how long were you here?
You know, former Douglas County Sheriff Earl Lee was responsible for me showing up in Douglasville because I had a part-time job in Cumming at the radio station there, and they had a serial killer that was killed out on the side of I-20 when he was trying to escape by Earl and a GBI agent, Ron Angel. And the man that owned the radio station here, Howard Rowe, didn't have a newsman here at WDGL, and it just so happened that I had been filling in for the lady that did the news at the Cumming station. He liked what he heard. And, how would you like to do news in Douglasville? And so that day, the next day, I started work here at WDGL.
Right. Now, did you move to Douglasville at that time, or when did you move to, I say Douglasville, Douglas County?
Not at that time. I was still living in Atlanta. I was commuting between Atlanta and Cumming because it was just a part-time job I had at the Cumming radio station. My full-time job was delivering blueprints and delivering repaired TV sets and anything I could find, even telephone soliciting, you know, in the meantime. So I lived in Atlanta. And I moved out here to the Six Flags area after I came to work here in the early 70s at WDGL.
Right. And then at a point you moved on to Marietta, where you had another well-known personality, Big Hugh Baby.
Hugh Baby, Jarrett.
So how long were you in Marietta, and what did you do?
I guess I was there at WFOM maybe three or 4 years, and at the same time I was working there, I was also still stringing for the Constitution, so I had a little money coming in there. And Hugh Baby, I was working at WFOM the day that Elvis died, and Hugh Baby Hugh Baby sang with Elvis in the Jordanaire, so I was fielding phone calls from all over the world that day, people wanting to interview Hugh, and we did a special show there, and he was a very talented individual and a very nice guy to me. He was another one of those that reached out and gave me a helping hand. So.
And then you moved on to WQXI AM 94Q, Star 94, Steve and Vicki Morning Show, which I'm sure some of our viewers remember. And you were doing traffic reports there. Is that when you first got high above the ground, or?
A little before. Steve and Vicki, I think, was the first time. Now, I worked with, while Gary McKee was on at Quixie, I did news, and I would fill in for the traffic reporters. And during that time, there were a lot of things happening. FM was becoming more popular than AM, and there were 13 of us working in the news department at WQXI Radio, and when I left in WQXI in 1991, myself and the news director were the only ones left. There had been quite a cut in the radio news business, and so during that time, I think I worked with McKee and another I think it was Murphy and McKeever that was in for a short time, and then the Steve and Vicky show. And while Steve and Vicky was on, that was when I was hired away to WSB.
Right, 1991, and of course that's been certainly a good situation, I think, for you, and certainly for those of us who have listened to you on WSB down through the years. Of course, when you went to WSB, you were reunited with Gary McKee and the hometown morning show, but that started a long stint for you at WSB.
It really did. I'm going on my 20th year, a few more months, and it'll be 20 years I've been in the air at WSB, and it's a great radio station to work for, a lot of history under that roof. I tell everybody that steps in there and goes to work in the traffic department, just remember there are only 3 letters for the title of this radio station, and that's the only one around in this state that has 3 letters, and so you're at a special place, and it's to be treated with respect and dignity. I was one of the lucky ones that came there early and got to work in the old white columns. That's been torn down now and replaced with an ultra-modern facility, about I guess 3 or 4 times as much space as we had in the old building. And now we've seen a big swing where it was radio and TV. Now even some of the AJC employees are under our roof, and we're focusing a lot of our efforts on electronic news.
A lot of changes, you know, and I've shared this with you before that long years ago, after I graduated from University of Georgia in 1960 and came to Atlanta, went to work for the Atlanta Journal as a reporter, and of course got acquainted with people in the news staff at WSB in particular, as well as the 3 TV stations then. And one of the people at WSB that I really enjoyed was Aubrey Morris. And Herb, you know, I've said that I think you have the most distinctive voice on WSB radio since Aubrey Morris. And that's a real compliment, because I was certainly a real fan of Aubrey Morris. In fact, not too many people may know this, but back in 1963, I left the Atlanta Journal and went to work for the DeKalb County government to head up their public information department. And later, Aubrey left WSB Radio and took a parallel job with Fulton County. That lasted all of about 3 weeks. Aubrey couldn't stand to be in the office working. He'd hear the siren going down the street, and he couldn't leave his office to go follow it. So he decided that he had to get back to WSB Radio so that he could get to wherever the siren was going and then report that as soon as possible. So give us a couple of memories of Aubrey Morris, whom I understand passed away last year.
And we just lost him last year. The sad part in our recent history at WSB, because he was such a, you know, Aubrey was really the first radio newsman that took it serious in this town and got out and got the news. And before him, I want to say that the only radio remote that was done was from the newspaper building when they owned the radio station, and the reporter would stick his head out the window and say, you know, what he saw burning down the street. But what was fascinating about Aubrey Morris was his dedication to WSB, his dedication to his community, the service that he provided not only to his listeners over the radio, because Aubrey Morris was not one who would back down from anybody at the top to the bottom, to the famous story of him shouting through the restroom door to Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter was president. So he was truly a broadcasting treasure. And it makes me proud to stand beside Aubrey at the Georgia Radio Hall of Fame. I can tell you that he's a good man.
I'm sure. When I tell tell us about the Skycopter Lounge and how you got the name Captain Herb.
When I came to WSB, Scott Slade was doing the helicopter traffic. He was the Skycopter traffic man. And there was around a 3-month period of negotiation that went on between my leaving WQXI and Star 94 and going to WSB. And in that period of time that they decided they wanted me to do the traffic, Captain Dave Folk had been the traffic reporter before Scott Slade. Captain Dave was an honorary captain in the Clayton County Fire Department, and was a news reporter who just started doing traffic, and so they wanted to go back to a rank. Well, the only rank I had was Zell Miller had made me a lieutenant colonel in the state militia, as he did many people, you know, when he was governor, and so they decided they were going to call me Colonel Herb because of that. You know, it was going to be Colonel Herb. About 5 minutes before I was to go on the air with my first report, the program director calls up and he says, "Listen," says, "we're going to have to change that." Says, Gary McKee is getting tongue-tied saying Colonel Herb, and so we're gonna have to make it Captain Herb, you know. And so then it was on to the payphone, because it didn't have cell phone back then. Okay, I ran in to the hangar at the airport there at Peachtree DeKalb, and I called Earl Lee up, and I was an honorary deputy, and I said, "Sheriff," I said, "I'm gonna have to ask you for a quick promotion here." "Well, Herb, if you need it, go ahead." All right. So I was promoted to captain over the phone by the sheriff, and so I went on the report as Captain Herb. It's been that way ever since. Hadn't been promoted. A lot of people talk about that. 20 years without a promotion, must be doing a pretty darn bad job.
Well, I think for the entire Atlantic community, indeed North Georgia and beyond, we've kind of adopted you as the voice of warning, comfort, and hope in the frustrating world of traffic in the Atlanta area. And thanks for being there to guide us, chide us, and warn us as we hit the interstates and the highways. But you know, highways is not the only venue that your reporting skills at WSB, and you're probably about as famous now for your NASCAR show as you are for being in the Skycopter Lounge. And I think that may be two different audiences that you have there. I'm not sure, but tell us about your interest in auto racing and how you came to host this NASCAR show.
You know, I told you my dad took me to that bowling alley, and that got me next door to the radio station, and he had a lot to do with the NASCAR thing because he was at the racetrack Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. From the time I was 6 months old, I was at a racetrack. They would carry me around in a laundry basket, from what I've been told, you know, and they'd put me up in the grandstands, and he would park cars on Friday night and make enough money parking the cars at the race in Asheville to go to Greenville Pickens the next night, and then he'd have a little money that he could go wherever Ralph Earnhardt, because a buddy of his was Ralph Earnhardt, Dale Earnhardt's father, Dale Jr.'s grandfather. And so my dad helped him with what little, they didn't have much of an organized pit crew back then. It was just whoever showed up and helped you unload the car, you know, or unhook the car from the car. And all through, up until high school, I was at the racetrack every weekend. And then in high school, you know, girls came along and football, and I had a little band going there, and I told my dad, "So I'm never going to another one of these redneck NASCAR races with you again." And I stopped going during high school, and I didn't go to any after I moved to Atlanta. But when I was working at WFOM, one of the advertisers wanted me to drive their car in the parade lap, and I was the only one at that radio station knew a thing about racing, and so I was drafted to drive that car, and I called my dad. I said, "Come on down, I'll take you to the races." And I went down there, we did the parade lap, we stayed and watched the race, and I didn't miss one since that time.
Right.
So I started covering it while I was at WQXI, because I was once again the only one at that radio station that knew anything about it. So I did a little dabbling in it and covering it there, and then they worked on that at WSB when I moved over there.
Right.
they saw how popular NASCAR had become in
Right.
1992 and 93, and they
Right.
started our show in 1994, and Alan Vigil Ford has
Yeah.
sponsors us now for all these years except 2. So.
My gosh, that's a great story. Well, you know, as we both know, Douglasville Mayor Mickey Thompson many years ago was in NASCAR's Dash Series and now participates in the Sports Car Club of America Road Racing Series. And I know he was elated last year to win the Sports Car Club of America's
Yes.
SPU Points Championship in Central Florida. So won a couple of races at Daytona.
Now, I heard that was the reason he became mayor. Is he had so many speeding tickets, right? Is that the deal with that? So no, Mickey, he and Buzz, as we call him around the track there, he's very talented behind the wheel, and I guess he should be since he, is in that aviation business too. I think that
That's
helps
right.
you a little bit with your control in race cars there. And I was real proud of him winning that championship.
Right. Herb, just any more comments you want to make about the NASCAR show that you got before we move to another part of our program?
We're on every Saturday afternoon on news. It's on AM 750 and now 95.5 FM
Right.
News Talk WSB, and we're normally on at noon. But during the Georgia Bulldog season, we're either on before or after the
Right.
Bulldogs because we're home with the dogs too.
Right, very good. Well, let's switch to a more personal side of Herb Emory. Tell us briefly about your family.
I've been married to my wife, Karen, 25 years now, and together longer than that. We've just about our entire lives together have been lived here in Douglasville.
Right.
We love this. We love this town. I lost my son Joseph in 2007, and of course that causes you to reset your life when something like that. Something like that happens, and so anytime I'm talking about my family, I have to include him and say that it's very important that people let all their family members know this meth is nothing to mess around with.
Right.
One time with
Right.
meth led to his death.
Right.
And it'll always leave a mark on our lives. And you might think you're having a big time at a party somewhere and everybody else is doing it, and this will be just fine, but it only takes one time. So that's the sad part of my life. The happy part of my life is that all the people here in Douglasville that reached out to Karen and I during that time and held us up, and the people in this community that gave me the helping hands all during my life. From the first time I set foot in this town, there were people that were helping me along. Captain Herb wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people like Earl Lee and Judge Robert James and Sheriff Phil Miller and even Chief Womack here, who went out their way to and will go out of their way, I think, to give anybody a helping hand that needs it.
And there's nothing like people that come to the plate for you when you need
That's right.
help.
When you're down, you find out who your real friends are. So.
Now, I know down through the years, we said some of the people that you've worked with professionally. Now, back there, something special about the Georgia Radio Hall of Fame class of 2008. Tell us about that.
There apparently was some, what do they call it, hanging chads, or what do they call that? Some kind of malfunction in the voting machines there on that election. That was a real surprise to me, but of course a great honor for me as well to be voted by the people that I work with into the Radio Hall of Fame, and Aubrey standing there shaking my hand, and as I said, Gary McKee, he was the one that inducted me into the Hall of Fame. So it was a very special night that night. And once again, I had so many great teachers in that broadcasting business, and a lot of them were there that night. A lot of them weren't there, but Don Kennedy, I think, Officer Don from Channel 2, who also a lot of people didn't know was in the news business himself and had Georgia Network, and so it was really a surprise, but a great honor to be in the Hall of Fame.
And you have been recognized, of course, by your peers a number of times down through the years, and I think you've got, in addition to 2 Green Eyeshade Awards, you've won 15 first place awards down through the years. for your news and traffic reporting. You were elected by your peers to be president of the Georgia Associated Press Broadcasting Association back in the early 90s. So Captain Herb, I think people have certainly recognized what you have done down through the years. I know one of the things that you have become especially involved in is Team Georgia. And I know you've established a Victims Assistance Fund that supports those who've lost a parent in an impaired driving crash. Tell us about that.
But Team Georgia is a safe driving coalition, and I've been on the board at Team Georgia now for about 20 years too, and I joined that after a good friend of mine died down on Thornton Road. A fella just ran the red light and drunk as a cooter and never stopped, and my friend never got out of his car after that, and was killed instantly in that crash. And drugs and alcohol behind the wheel don't mix, or in a boat. And so we had to finally turn our attention. Team Georgia, when we started, it was automobile safety and getting a designated driver and not doing anything crazy. Not just drinking and driving and doing drugs, but not doing anything crazy behind the wheel. And the same now applies for boats because we've had so many deaths on the water. Team Georgia, we have a website, teamgeorgia.net. We do a safe holiday program each year where you can even go to restaurants, and if you go to them, your designated driver will get a free drink, not an alcohol drink, a non-alcoholic drink. And same thing if you go to the Georgia Dome, the Phillips Arena, Turner Field, sign up to be a designated driver. You get a free non-alcoholic drink for being the designated driver. Saved a lot of lives too.
Right. Well, as you've been talking the last little bit, we've been showing on the screen that website so that if anyone wants to make a contribution to help with the Victims Assistance Fund in this very worthy cause to help children and who've lost a parent as a result of the kind of accidents that you're talking about. Now, early in the program, Herb, I noted that you frequently can be seen around Douglasville, and we're going to give you a chance in a little while because you promised to take me to lunch after we got through with this program. But I know that you participated in several parades here, most recently a Labor Day parade this year, and you usually are in a rather famous car. Tell us about that.
That's my Mayberry Patrol car, and I've had that a long time. It's really, I've been a big Andy Griffith show fan for a long time.
Right.
I still believe maybe they should make them watch Andy Griffith in school. You know, a lot of those episodes have some important life lessons that are taught. So being originally from North Carolina and a big Andy Griffith fan, my wife kept asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and I could never think anything to tell her that I wanted. And I'd always say, I want a 1960, 64 Mayberry Patrol car, Ford Galaxy Mayberry Patrol. And after about telling her that for about 10 or 12 years, one Christmas morning I got up and there she had it in the garage. So the rest is history. It's a lot of fun. At the parades, and we take it out to different community events, and people just love that car. They love to get a picture made with that car, and they love to see that car motoring around. So.
Well, we appreciate you being in the parade this year, and of course you'd been the Grand Marshal 2 or 3 years ago. We're out of time, but I want to thank you, Captain Herb, for being with us today. I always give my guests the opportunity for a last word, so the mic's yours.
I just want to say thanks to you and Mickey, Buzz, the City Council, for the good job you do. I appreciate that road you built out there. I hope to get it open soon so we can get some traffic on that, because we got to stay ahead of this traffic game in this town. Every little bit helps. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
To our viewers, thank you for being with us today, and hope you will join us next time for another edition on The Agenda.